Black Widower of Arlington, unearthing Jack Reeves' decades of deception. This is the story of Jack Wayne Reeves, a man who meticulously curated a life of suburban tranquility in Arlington, Texas, while concealing a monstrous secret. It's a chilling narrative that proves evil can wear the unassuming mask of a retired Army Master Sergeant, hiding in plain sight in a neighborhood advertised for its safety and good schools. The nightmare began, as is often the case, with a simple missing persons report. On an unremarkable Wednesday night in October 1994, Detective Evans received a call that would eventually pull the Arlington Police Department into a decades-long serpentine mystery. Emelita Reeves, Jack's fourth wife, was gone. Emelita, a bright-eyed Filipina who'd come to America through a mail-order bride service, a transaction born out of desperation to support her struggling family back home, had vanished into thin air. Jack Reeves' immediate reaction was what first raised alarm bells, not for its frantic panic, but for its unnerving calmness. He painted Emelita as a flighty, unfaithful wife who had simply run off with a lover, claiming, "She does this all the time. Everything's fine." But his composure was a veneer, a rehearsed performance that spoke volumes to seasoned detectives. Why was this husband so suspiciously unconcerned? Why didn't he seem to care about the mother of his young son? 5 days later, the facade began to crack. Emelita's distinctive red car was found abandoned in a supermarket parking lot, but the scene was meticulously wrong. We, as investigators and observers, knew instantly this was a staging. Emelita, described as a small woman, would have had her driver's seat pulled far forward. Yet the seat was pushed all the way back, perfectly positioned for a much larger man, Jack Reeves himself. Her child's car seat was removed, and the car was unlocked, a detail her protective nature would never allow. This wasn't a woman fleeing to a lover. This was a crime scene engineered by a clumsy killer attempting to mimic abandonment. The evidence from the car was the single thread that forced detectives to pull on the tapestry of Jack Reeves' past. And what unraveled was a horrifying, predictable pattern of spousal murder. The truth was far darker than one missing wife. Jack Reeves was a serial killer whose victims were always the women who dared to marry him and then, critically, tried to leave him. The files on his former wives were reopened, confirming our darkest fears. Sharon Reeves, wife 2, died in 1978 from a shotgun blast, ruled a suicide, suspiciously occurring just a week after she filed for divorce. Her body was exhumed during the Emelita investigation. A Korean national, she drowned in Lake Whitney in 1986. Her death was ruled accidental, despite her extreme fear of water. Jack had her body cremated immediately, destroying the most critical forensic evidence. This act alone, a cynical removal of all physical proof, speaks volumes about his guilt. Suddenly, Jack Reeves was transformed from a worried husband into a black widower, a domestic predator operating with chilling impunity for decades. Every injury is a puzzle piece, and every victim is a witness. The forensic evidence became the ultimate voice for these silenced women. When Emelita's skeletal remains were finally discovered nearly a year later in a shallow grave near Lake Whitney, the same lake where Myong met her end, the science was devastatingly clear. The medical examiner didn't just confirm the death, they determined the method. The presence of microscopic diatoms, tiny algae, in Emelita's bone marrow proved she'd been alive and inhaling water when she drowned. She was killed, not elsewhere, but drowned before being buried. The final showdown, the power of a child's testimony. The mountain of evidence, the deliberately staged car, the diatom analysis, the exhumed body of Sharon, the pattern of spousal elimination, all pointed to Jack. But the final, most devastating blow came from the most unlikely and tragic witness, his own son. It takes immense courage for a child to testify against a parent, especially in a case of this magnitude. When their young son finally spoke out, confirming that he had seen his father drown Emelita in their bathtub, the domesticity of the location making the act even more sickening, the case was irrefutable. This wasn't just forensic science. This was the raw, emotional truth of a child burdened by a secret too terrible to bear. The courtroom atmosphere must have been electric, a chilling culmination of decades of silence and deception. Jack Reeves sat there, that same practiced indifference likely plastered across his face, a man who believed his lies were impenetrable. In the end, the jury saw through the veteran's facade. Jack Reeves was convicted of capital murder for Emelita and murder for Sharon. He received a 99-year sentence for Emelita's murder and 35 years for Sharon's. Though he was never formally tried for Myong-hi's death, his life sentence ensured that Jack Reeves would die in prison, a fitting end for a man who systematically destroyed the lives of 3 women who dared to love him and eventually dared to leave him. This case is a profound and terrifying testament to the truth that the victims, through the voices of forensic experts and the fragments of their lives left behind, will always win in the end. The aftermath. Justice delayed, not denied. The conviction of Jack Reeves in Tarrant County was not just a legal victory. It was a profound vindication for the detectives who had chased this cold case for years, and most importantly, for the families of Sharon, Myong, and Emelita. I can only imagine the weight lifted from their shoulders, knowing that the man who had stalked and murdered their loved ones was finally stripped of his freedom and his ability to deceive. But the legal journey didn't end with the guilty verdict. Reeves, the quintessential narcissist, never accepted responsibility. He spent years appealing his convictions, relentlessly attempting to discredit the forensic evidence, the diatom analysis, and the powerful, painful testimony of his own son. His appeals were consistently denied, each rejection a reaffirmation of the scientific and testimonial truth established in court. The legal system, though slow, ultimately held firm against his web of lies. The sheer audacity of his crimes forced authorities to scrutinize every detail of his life. It was revealed that Reeves profited financially from all 3 deaths, collecting life insurance money and other assets, providing a cold, clear motive for greed alongside his need for control. This financial trail became a secondary layer of evidence, painting him not just as a killer, but as a manipulative profiteer. The legacy of the victims. More than just evidence. What often gets lost in the sensationalism of a true crime story are the lives that were extinguished. Emelita, Myong, and Sharon were more than just skeletal remains or entries in a police log. Sharon Reeves was a young woman trying to reclaim her life and independence, brutally silenced just as she was achieving freedom. Myong-hi Chong Reeves was isolated and tragically drowned in a manner designed to look accidental, her memory almost erased by quick cremation. This forensic proof, coupled with the heartbreaking, belated testimony from Jack and Emelita's son, who witnessed his father drown his mother in the bathtub, finally brought the monster down. The sight of that X-ray, highlighting a blunt force trauma and orbital fracture, alongside the scientific proof of drowning, transforms Emelita's remains into a powerful, irrefutable confession. In the end, Jack Reeves faced justice, convicted for the murders of Emelita and Sharon Reeves. He received life sentences, but the dark shadow of Myong's murder still looms. A testament to the fact that sometimes, even a killer's meticulous planning can't completely erase the evidence. This case is a stark reminder that the deepest secrets often lie not in the darkest alleys, but behind the closed doors of seemingly ordinary homes. The dead, through the science of the morgue, always tell the final story. The Black Widower's past, reopening the cold cases. The moment the diatoms confirmed Emelita's drowning, the focus shifted entirely. This wasn't just about Emelita anymore. It was about exposing a serial domestic predator. My personal belief, shared by many veteran detectives, is that Jack Reeves, with his military background and meticulous nature, felt invincible. He'd successfully manipulated the system twice before, making murder look like suicide and accident. He thought his luck, or his calculated staging, would hold forever. The real challenge lay in the past, specifically the case of Sharon Reeves, his second wife. Her death in 1978 had been ruled a suicide by shotgun. The initial theory was that she had used her toe to pull the trigger. Just think about that image for a moment. The sheer physical contortion required, the cold determination. It never sat right. Why would a woman who was actively filing for divorce, who had found the courage to finally leave her husband, suddenly choose to end her life? The timing was far too convenient for Jack. The key to unraveling Sharon's case was exhumation. We had to literally dig up the past. Forensic pathologists today possess tools and knowledge that were science fiction decades ago. By re-examining Sharon's remains and combining that with witness testimony that Jack had often threatened her and handled guns carelessly, the narrative shifted. The defense of suicide crumbled under the weight of Jack Reeves' established pattern of eliminating wives who sought independence. This was a man who viewed his marriage contracts not as partnerships, but as unbreakable ownership deeds. The profile of a domestic predator, control and profit. Jack Reeves wasn't driven by passion or momentary rage. He was driven by control and financial expediency. Every single time a wife sought to leave him, he was suddenly faced with the prospect of dividing assets, potentially paying alimony, and worst of all for a narcissist, losing control. Consider his third wife, Myong-hi Chong Reeves. She drowned in Lake Whitney, the same lake where Emelita's body was eventually found nearby. I believe this wasn't a coincidence. It was his signature. Myong's cremation, executed with suspicious speed by Jack, was a masterstroke in crime evasion. He destroyed the physical evidence, preventing modern diatom analysis. He understood that no body meant no forensic proof, a lesson he learned from the near-successful staging of Sharon's death. This is the calculated mind of a killer who learns from experience. The psychological profile, the true legacy of the Reeves case lies in the enduring strength of Emelita's family, particularly her son, who had to grow up knowing the terrifying truth about his father. His bravery in speaking out was the hinge upon which the entire case turned. It is a powerful, heartbreaking reminder that children are not blind to domestic violence and deception, and their truth must be heard. A turning point for forensic science in Texas. The Jack Reeves case also had a lasting impact on how law enforcement and forensic teams in Texas handled deaths, initially ruled as accidents or suicides, especially those involving water. The meticulous work involving the diatom analysis was crucial and highlighted the extraordinary power of microscopic evidence to rewrite a death certificate. It sent a clear message across the state. The medical examiner's office is the last line of defense for the victims. No death, particularly those surrounding individuals with suspicious marital histories, should be accepted at face value. This case cemented the necessity of re-examining old files with fresh eyes and modern scientific tools, a process that has since led to the closure of many other cold cases. Jack Reeves, the quiet suburban killer, will spend the rest of his days behind bars, stripped of the power and control he craved. The Black Widower failed to destroy the evidence. He merely preserved it, unwittingly ensuring that his wives' tragic stories would finally be told, not by him, but by the relentless, scientific truth whispering from the morgue. And that, in my opinion, is the ultimate form of justice.